Iran and Iraq are deepening ties amid regional tensions, reaffirming security pacts, expanding economic cooperation, and exchanging war-era remains. Washington warns Baghdad to disarm Iran-backed militias, while Tehran accuses the US and Israel of sinister ambitions. As Turkey extends its military presence, the fragile Middle East balance teeters between cooperation, confrontation, and historical scars. Iran and Iraq are deepening ties once again, this time under a renewed push for regional stability and economic growth. During talks in Tehran on October 21st, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian called for expanding cooperation with Baghdad across all sectors, describing relations between the two nations as excellent.
Our relationship with Iraq is excellent. Expanding cooperation in security, economy, science, and culture will strengthen both nations and the wider Muslim world.
Speaking to Iraq's National Security Advisor Qasim al-Araji, Pezeshkian stressed that regular diplomatic exchanges would foster understanding and help coordinate positions on international issues. Al-Araji, echoing that sentiment, underlined that Iraq's security was closely linked to Iran's and reaffirmed Baghdad's commitment to their 2023 bilateral security pact.
Iraq's security is inseparable from Iran's. We remain committed to the 2023 agreement and will prevent any threats to Iran from our shared border.
Al-Araji's visit to Tehran began on October 20th and included meetings with several senior Iranian figures: Supreme National Security Council Secretary Ali Larijani, Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf, and IRGC Chief Commander Mohammad Pakpour. The high-level talks come as Tehran and Baghdad work to consolidate their border security and deter external influence, particularly amid heightened tensions following Israel's June 13th strike on Iran. In a joint press conference with Larijani, al-Araji reiterated Iraq's position on maintaining neutrality and preventing its territory from being used in any regional conflict. He added that Baghdad had filed a formal complaint to the UN Security Council over Israel's violation of Iraqi airspace during that attack. Larijani, meanwhile, said the focus of their discussions was on expanding economic relations as part of ensuring long-term stability. While Tehran and Baghdad reaffirmed unity, Washington sent a very different message. On October 21st, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio called Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, pressing him to disarm Iran-backed militias accused of undermining Iraq's sovereignty and diverting national resources for Tehran's benefit.
The Secretary highlighted the urgency in disarming Iran-backed militias that undermine Iraq's sovereignty, threaten the lives and businesses of Americans and Iraqis, and pilfer Iraqi resources for Iran.
The State Department added that Rubio emphasized America's continued commitment to safeguarding Iraqi sovereignty, bolstering regional stability, and strengthening economic ties. Washington's frustration with the armed factions has grown since January, with American officials privately warning Baghdad that US forces could carry out airstrikes on these militias if Iraq failed to act. The militias in question, including Kataib Hezbollah and Harakat al-Nujaba, have long been at the heart of Iraq's power struggle. Originally formed to resist US troops after the 2003 invasion, their ranks and influence swelled during the war against ISIS between 2014 and 2017. While officially integrated under the Popular Mobilization Forces, or the PMF, many of these groups maintain allegiance to Tehran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or the IRGC. Their fighters were also active in Syria alongside Bashar al-Assad's forces. During the anti-ISIS campaign, some were accused of human rights abuses in Sunni-majority areas, violations the Iraqi government and PMF described as individual acts. Earlier this year, Reuters quoted a Kataib Hezbollah commander as saying Iran had instructed militias to avoid confrontation with the US or Israel.
Trump is ready to take the war with us to worse levels. We want to avoid such a bad scenario.
But Iraqi politician Mutal al-Alusi dismissed such reports, claiming the militias were still receiving advanced weapons. The presence of Tehran-aligned armed factions remains one of the biggest sources of tension between Baghdad and Washington, particularly as many of these groups are contesting Iraq's upcoming parliamentary elections. Even as new political and military alliances form, the scars of the past continue to shape Iran-Iraq relations. Over 50,000 soldiers from the brutal 8-year Iran-Iraq war remain missing, according to the International Committee of the Red Cross.
More than 3 decades after the end of the conflict, over 52,000 soldiers from both sides remain missing.
The ICRC said the latest exchange of remains took place on October 5th, with 70 Iraqi and 48 Iranian soldiers repatriated. Since 2010, more than 5,000 remains have been exchanged through a mechanism established under a 2008 Geneva Memorandum. Despite the somberness of these efforts, both nations continue to strengthen their military partnership. On October 22nd, Iran's Armed Forces Chief of Staff, Major General Abdolrahim Mousavi, met al-Araji in Tehran, urging full implementation of the bilateral security agreement.
The Americans are worried about the solidarity between the two nations, and our enemies are well aware of the blessings that this unity brings.
He accused Washington of harboring sinister plans to dominate Iraq, saying US actions and Israeli aggression had exposed their intentions.
If the recent aggressions by the Zionist regime and the US against the Islamic Republic had not occurred, perhaps the American intentions to control Iraq's space would have remained hidden.
Al-Araji, in response, praised the Iranian people's resilience during the recent 12-day war with Israel and reaffirmed Iraq's loyalty to their shared security framework. Meanwhile, Turkey, another major regional player, has extended the deployment of its troops in Iraq and Syria for 3 more years. The Turkish parliament on October 21st approved President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's motion allowing continued cross-border operations against ISIS and Kurdish militants. Ankara justifies its presence in both countries as vital to its national security. As Iran and Iraq close ranks, Washington warns of militias, and Turkey extends its reach. The region's fragile balance once again appears at a crossroads, poised between cooperation and confrontation.